And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Friday, January 31st. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So, we were doing pretty well this week with no technical issues, but they have flared up today as I was trying to go live, but hopefully they're at a minimum. But let's get into what we're going to discuss. So we're going to talk about Matthew Stafford. It looks like he will definitely be coming back, which I'm not surprised by that, but we'll get into that conversation and whether or not it'll be with the Rams or a different team. Then we will also talk about Brandon Beane, the general manager for the Buffalo Bills, his comments on their most recent playoff loss to the Chiefs. We'll get into talking about a possible Pete Carroll-Russell Wilson reunion in Vegas, if there's a chance that can happen. We'll talk about the Cincinnati Bengals and the likelihood of T. Higgins and Jamar Chase both being back with the team next season. And then in the final part of the show, we'll talk about technology that could be replacing the chains when positioning the ball, first down, all that. We'll talk about what the NFL could possibly do. And it's something that we saw a little bit in the preseason, but we'll get into that conversation at the end. Because obviously, the talk of this week was all about Josh Allen and that first down that people thought he picked up. Some people didn't think he did. I was of the mindset that I thought he got it, but apparently not. So we'll get into that conversation at the end of the show. But let's get into the first topic, which is talking about Matthew Stafford. So it's being reported that he is going to come back next season, which, like I said, I'm not surprised. I kind of figured that. Matthew Stafford did play well this year. But now it's all about where. Is it going to be with the Rams? Is it going to be with a different team? What's going to happen there? Now, like I said, I thought he was coming back, and I think it's going to be with the Rams, right? I don't think he's going to go anywhere else. Now, could he end up elsewhere? Sure. There are teams out there that need quarterbacks, but I think the only spot that makes sense for me is to return to LA and be with the Rams. Now, going into the season, before the year started, the Rams and Stafford had to rework some things with his contract, and they were ultimately able to figure that out. And Stafford went out and he had a good year. They overcame some adversity this year because you had injuries to your top two wideouts, and the Rams' offense wasn't that fun to watch during that time. And they were 1-4. And it looked like this could be a disaster of a season. But then once they got Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp back against the Vikings on that Thursday night, things changed. And actually, you could even look at the game against the 49ers that they won. I mean, the 49ers were missing a ton of guys in that game too, but the Rams were still able to gut out that win. And then, like I said, they beat the Vikings with Kupp and Puka back. And we know what happened after that. They went on to win a division title, which I didn't expect going into the year. I thought that the Niners would win the division, but the Niners dealt with a ton of injuries. And, they ended up making the playoffs. They won a playoff game. Unfortunately, they fell a little bit short to the Eagles. They had a chance to win that game at the end, but they fell a little bit short. And Stafford played well in that game, with all things considered. With how bad the weather got, he played a good game. Did lose a fumble in that, But I also look at it as, the weather played a huge factor in that. It did. But I'm happy that Stafford's going to be coming back. It's just a matter of now, can the Rams and Stafford, figure things out on their end? Otherwise, maybe he is going to play elsewhere. But I remember when I talked about this a couple weeks ago, I said I think it could be Stafford that comes back and Cooper Kupp ends up going elsewhere. They end up trading him somewhere. But I didn't see a scenario where both of them were coming back. Now, I think there's a scenario where they both do come back. But like I said, I don't see a scenario where they're both gone. And I think you still want to have Cooper Kupp around. I know he had a disappointing finish to his season, but I mean, he's still a productive player. He's a few years removed from the Triple Crown year. I get that, but even when you go back to Week 1, Puka Nacua gets hurt, and it was all Cooper Kupp. It was the Cooper Kupp show against the Lions. Now, they came up a little bit short in that game, but Cooper Kupp had a big game. And, maybe it's just one of those tough stretches that you have to deal with. Next year, it's a different year. Let's see if he bounces back from that rough finish to the season. And he had some big plays in the playoffs. I mean, I think he only had one catch against the Vikings, but it was, it's a good catch. And against the Eagles, he had a big catch in that game as well. It's just Puka Nacua has taken, the league by storm, and you could tell that Stafford favors him a little bit more now than he does Kupp. But it's either Stafford comes back and Kupp doesn't come back, or they both come back. Those are the two scenarios that I see happening. And just like I said, when it comes to quarterbacks, there's teams out there that need receivers. So if Cooper Kupp ends up being traded, there's a team that will definitely take a chance on him. But only time will tell. And, I still think Stafford has, 2 to 3 good years left in him. The Rams just got to make sure they protect him. And Stafford's a guy that has dealt with a lot of injuries. He's banged up at times last year. You got to make sure he's protected. And, getting Tyler Higbee back towards the end of the year, after he missed the whole year recovering from the ACL injury that he suffered last year. And that was in the playoffs, I believe. That's a big weapon to get back. So that only makes this offense better going forward. And he was good in the playoffs. So you got him back, you bring Kupp back, you got Puka, and obviously you got Kyren Williams coming out of the backfield. And look at the defense. The defense improved throughout the year. It's a young defense, especially on the defensive line. You got a couple rookies with Verse and Fisk. If they could put together a good offseason, I mean, this team's going to be right there. They're not that far away. They could definitely make a run. You have people on TV saying how, they could be a dangerous team. They make the playoffs. I mean, they had a chance to beat the Eagles. They did. But, like I said, the weather got bad. They turned the ball over. And also Saquon Barkley just ran wild on them too. But with Stafford, they're a team that could compete in the NFC. And obviously Sean McVay being one of the best head coaches in the NFL. This is a team that is going to be a problem if you run it back. But like I said, they just got to stay healthy. Got to stay healthy. And they were able to weather the storm with the injuries that they suffered on the offensive line, with the receivers. So they could do it again. But I think they would prefer not to. I think they want to be healthy for the most part from start to finish. But yeah, so my gut feeling, Stafford's going to be back with the Rams. I would be surprised if he went somewhere else. I mean, listen, I root for a team that needs a quarterback. If we were able to get, if the Giants were able to get Stafford, that'd be great. But then he would be behind, and he'd be behind an offensive line that's not very good. So I don't want that for him. But if the Giants were able to patch up the offensive line and they could protect Stafford, yeah, I take him. Also, just because I'd like to see the Giants be competitive. And the Steelers are another team. The Raiders we'll talk about in a little bit. The Jets, I mean, we'll see what happens with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it might be possible that he does come back. Might be trending that way. But like I said, I definitely would be a little bit surprised if Stafford ended up leaving the Rams. I think he's going to stay. I think this is where he's going to finish his career. Got 2 to 3 tops, maybe more years left in him. He's going to stay in LA. He's going to stay in LA. But let me know what you guys think. Does Stafford stay with the Rams? Does he go elsewhere? Let me know in the comments. What do you guys think about him coming back? I mean, he's still got good football left. We saw that this year. So, like I said, I think he's going to be back with the Rams. I would be a little surprised if he left. So, we're going to take our first break of the show now, and then when we come back, we will talk about Brandon Beane of the Buffalo Bills, his comments on the Bills' recent playoff exit at the hands of the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'll give you my thoughts on that when we return. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.